What's up, guys? What's going on? I'm Paul. This is Pauline Theology's Daily Devotional, man, and we are going through the book of John. We're in John chapter 18, verses 23 and 24. John 18, 23 and 24. So if you haven't read it yet, excuse me, man, I just drank me a root beer, and it's like I was fine until I start trying to speak on camera on recording, and then I got a burp. Sorry about that, guys. But anyway, we're going through the book of John. We're in John chapter 18, 23 through 24. If you haven't read it yet, stop the tape. If you have, we're going to read and discuss and talk about the 4 questions, man. So let's not wait any further. How or what is going on in the scriptures? Well, we're coming to the end of the first kind of interrogation / trial, which really isn't a trial, just more of a preliminary speaking to Jesus, because we're going to see here that he's about to get sent. But we're at the end of that time, and what we saw before was that Jesus was still in charge. Even while he was bound, he was the one asking the questions. And then he got hit. Someone slapped the Lord, the Savior, the God of the universe. And then there was a question asked, how can you speak to the high priest in this way? When really the irony of the situation is, how could that guy speak, slap, or treat the God of the universe in this way? And Jesus answers that, and that's where we're at right now. So Jesus answers, he says, if I've spoken bad, then yeah, bring testimony or witness to the things that I've done that were wrong. He says, but if good, why have you slapped me? Look at this, man. Jesus is still speaking truthfully, boldly, because he is the God of the universe. I mean, quite simply. But he is speaking boldly about the truth. And this is what's so crazy, is the grace that he is showing by being in this situation, but the truth that is still being displayed as he speaks what is necessary. That's crazy. That's insane. And then it says they send him on to the Ananias then sends him on to Caiaphas. So what is this saying about God? I think it's saying that he is the perfect representation of grace and truth. And we saw that from the very beginning. Whenever John writes, he says Jesus was full of grace and truth. And we see it on display here as he is being humiliated in front of these people. But he won't be humiliated. He stands up with the truth of what he is doing. That there is nothing wrong in what he says or how he lives, because he is the perfect image of the Father. And so we see here Jesus and God living and showing us the perfect representation of grace and truth. Grace and truth. What does this say about mankind? I think it says one thing about power and those who are in power and what they do with this power, because Ananias and Caiaphas, Annas is first off, it states as he's the high priest, but it was more like an example someone said is like when you just continue to be called president, even though you're no longer the functioning president. However, Ananias is also still has some seed of power, because all of his relatives after that have been high priests, and right now his son-in-law, which is Caiaphas, is the high priest. Yet they bring him to Annas first. And so I say this because it is a representation of those in power. And what are you doing with it? What are you doing with it? I think it's important for us to see, because what's happening is Ananias, who obviously has some sort of power, even though he's not in this position officially, he sees Jesus first. And so he is able to, or he could have been able to mitigate the situations and stop this bogus trial from going forth, but he doesn't. Instead, he seeks his own gain and his own glory as he sends Jesus to Caiaphas so that he might be tried further. What are we doing with power? That's the question with man, is what are we doing with power? And how do we apply these truths to our lives, man? First off, it is recognizing the grace and truth of the Father and then living that out as his children. So I think that's important for us to do, because oftentimes, man, when we're doing witnessing to someone or living or talking with, we shy away from or tend to actively do one more than the other. Some of us are bold in the truth, but don't show grace in delivering it. Some of us are graceful in our lives, but never speak up to the truth of what should be said. And so I think that today, for an application, is that we would figure out where we stand in that spectrum, and then ask God for the grace and the truth, first to reveal it, and then secondly, to help us to achieve how we should live as Jesus, full of grace and full of truth. Hey, I appreciate you guys for listening, and I will see you. Have a great weekend, man. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you in the next episode.